Tonight on One America News, nearly 1 year after being freed from the Taliban, Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl faces charges of desertion and misbehavior. We have the details. Plus, new details emerge from the crash of a German airliner as an investigator says one pilot left the cockpit before the plane's descent. And later, Afghanistan's president outlines his country's plan to combat terrorism while thanking members of the U.S. military for their service. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, and tonight you're watching One America News. Welcome, I'm Cassie Leuffen. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for joining us tonight. U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is back in the news tonight as he now faces charges of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. 28-year-old Bergdahl was rescued from Afghanistan after spending 5 years in Taliban captivity. We are also following new developments tonight in the downed Germanwings flight that crashed in the French Alps on Tuesday. The New York Times reporting that evidence from a cockpit voice recorder indicates one of the pilots left the cockpit before the plane's descent and was unable to get back in. The plane crash killed all 150 people on board, including 3 Americans. Here's the latest on the crash as data from the first black box is being investigated. Again, Hillary Clinton addressing the email scandal. First and foremost, she said the agency will make her emails public after a review and that there are 4 things she wants the public to know. First, she used the personal account for convenience as she didn't want to use 2 separate accounts. Second, her emails did go directly to the government, although she did delete some of the personal ones, which later brought up the question of what those emails may have contained. Third, all copies of work-related emails were provided, roughly 55,000 printed pages, even though the State Department already had the vast majority of them. And fourth, she asked the State Department to take the unprecedented step of making all her work-related emails public for everyone to see. Finally, she did acknowledge it would have been better had she used 2 separate accounts, one for personal matters, one for work-related business. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Cassie Leuffen. We begin tonight with alarming news out of Iraq. 45 Iraqis are burned alive by Islamic State terrorists in the western town of al-Baghdadi. According to a police chief, it is not yet clear why they were killed. The chief added the identities of the victims are not yet known, although he believes some were members of security forces. We know the town was captured by ISIS terrorists last week and that it is just 5 miles away from an air base where more than 300 U.S. Marines are currently training Iraqi troops. An Iraqi colonel is pleading for help from the army and says a compound housing families of security personnel is now under attack. Local officials claim more than 90% of the district has been overrun by ISIS militants. All right, it is headlines recap time. Welcome back. President Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel held a joint press conference after meeting at the White House earlier today. Obama discussed the conflict in Ukraine, supporting Merkel's push for a diplomatic solution to it. He added that sanctions against Russia must continue until the country ends its involvement and helps broker peace. The president says he and Merkel will not allow the borders of Europe to be redrawn at the barrel of a gun. Deborah Luderbeck has more on their conference amid growing tensions over Ukraine. All right, well, next time you are waiting for your flight at the airport, double check your pockets just before you board. Not for your wallet or your phone, just check for your change. Passengers apparently leave hundreds of thousands of dollars in loose change at airport security checkpoints. This is according to the TSA. And we take you live right now to the launch of the Russian Soyuz rocket as 2 astronauts are headed to space for a year. Let's take a look.
Ramping up.
Light speed. Engines and flaps up front.
And liftoff. A year in space starts now. Kelly, Kornienko, and Padalka on their way towards the International Space Station.
The thrusters are
Want to mention that Kelly's year-long mission will mark the first time that an American has spent a continuous year in orbit. So very significant what's happening here. And while some Soviet-era cosmonauts have spent a year or more in space during the 80s and 90s on the space station Mir, this mission here will be the first time the United States and Russia have collaborated for a year-long space flight. The one-year mission will help scientists back on the ground, as we mentioned, gather important data about how the human body behaves during a long-term space flight. And this knowledge will help these astronauts with NASA's ultimate goal of getting to Mars. It's going to take a lot longer than a year to get to the red planet safely, but that is the goal here.
And turning our attention overseas tonight, a Turkish prosecutor has died after being shot during a hostage standoff in Istanbul. And we can tell you security forces killed 2 of the captors as well. Officials say prosecutor Mehmet Salim Kiraz died of wounds sustained in the shootout. A far-left Turkish group held the prosecutor hostage as he led an investigation into the death of a Turkish teenager during anti-government protests. Jillian Kishner has more for us on the standoff.
All right, if you're still with me, you know what you don't like when you're wearing and then you change again and again. Chameleons make it look a whole lot easier than that. Up next, chameleons can change colors to vanish before our eyes, and now experts have a theory on exactly how they do this. More after the break. Wow, different critters. We know they have feelers, maybe not feelings, but we're now learning cockroaches like us have their very own personalities. Matthew Stock reports on this study from Belgium.
Researchers from the Free University of Brussels found cockroaches have personalities and even display different character traits, such as bravery and shyness.
Might make you think twice the next time you see one of those little guys crawling by. Is it shy? Is it bold? Different strokes for different folks, maybe different approaches for different cockroaches. I'm out of time. Mike Deneau has your headlines covered right after this. Thank you for watching.
And in her honor, a quote from Miss Maya Angelou to close out our hour tonight. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it. Thank you so much for sharing your evening with me. I'm Cassie Leuffen. Good night. And if you're joining us, just a review here, there was a kidnapped suspect in South LA. He fled on the run. Cops were onto him after they ran his license plate. This began about an hour ago. They chased him. He was in a suburban car. He eventually got out of the car, pointing a gun at officers. Officers responded to that. He shot at them, and at that point, they were forced to shoot back. They did strike him. He appears to be wounded. You see the SWAT team on the screen now. They're taking him into custody, and this is after he had his hands up, as we saw there. He was negotiating for a long time. He was negotiating with the deputies, and now it seems that they have him after what has been a dramatic high-speed pursuit through the streets of South LA, ending here in these images tonight. This is one of those stories where you're going to go, why didn't I think of that? So here we go. Thanks to a new technology, ketchup is catching up with the times, meaning soon enough, there will be no more waiting for that slow ketchup to slowly come out of the bottle. None of that. It is called Liquid Glide, and it is a special coating that lines the inside of bottles to help substances slide right out of them. And this could even save you some money, too. A 2009 study found that products like glue or lotion are thrown away with up to 25% still left, just because what is remaining is stuck to the packaging. The creators expect Liquid Glide to be used as early as 2016. But seriously, why didn't you think of that? Come on now. Still to come here on One American News. A lot of thinking going on in this bunch. Some of the best and brightest students are trying their best to impress the president at the 5th annual White House Science Fair. That story and more when we come back. All right, well, as Bree mentioned there, Congress is off all week for President's Day. Wish we all got a week off for President's Day, but when they do come back, it will be crunch time for them to pass this funding bill. I don't even get a day off for President's Day, and that is because the news never stops. So on that, moving on here. It appears Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's upcoming speech to Congress will be censored for any potential election campaigning. The election chief says adding a 5-minute delay in Israel will give news editors a chance to cut out without any partisan rhetoric.
Turning to this now, Russia is experiencing a revival of anti-American sentiment that has not been seen since the height of the Cold War. The tensions are being fanned by Russia's state-run media as citizens are turning away from Western brands, popular brands like Coke and McDonald's. In turn, they're turning toward Russian-made products. And the anger peaked in February following the assassination, as we've covered, of Moscow critic Boris Nemtsov. Many conspiracy theorists in Russia claim his death was part of a CIA plot to discredit the government. Top story in our headlines recap this evening. Data recovered from the second Germanwings black box reportedly shows the co-pilot repeatedly sped up the plane as he used the autopilot to crash this aircraft.
Frigid temperatures are bringing several inches of snow to parts of Texas, causing traffic accidents and shutting down schools. Forecasters say some areas in Texas could see as much as 4 inches of snow. The snowfall has already closed major roadways and caused hundreds of accidents. Dozens of school districts are closed, including Lubbock, Midlands, and Odessa. Meanwhile, some people in the state enjoyed their very first taste of snow.
It's wonderful. I love it. I cannot get enough. I'm all wet, I'm all cold, but I love it.
So we'll have to see if the novelty wears off there. We do know the snow is staying around for now. A winter advisory is in effect for the Dallas area until 6 p.m. on Saturday. And fans and friends placed flowers at the Hollywood star for Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock on the original Star Trek series. The actor and movie director died at his Los Angeles home this morning. Nimoy's show business career spanned more than 6 long decades and included stints as a stage actor and television guest star. He also directed a handful of films, including the box office hit 3 Men and a Baby in 1987. Hannah Buchdahl brings us more on his life. This here, everyone, is a demonstration of what many on the internet are calling the worst parking job ever. Brought to you by a Washington, D.C. Democrat. This is video posted online by a media company called Roll Call. And you see that car in the middle. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton is reportedly behind the wheel there. A 77-year-old is caught hitting the curb multiple times while trying to squeeze into that space that appears to be open wide. It looks like she is hitting the vehicles next to her. Sources say she left the spot for about 30 minutes before returning to move the car. She reportedly put a business card on the windshield of the red Nissan. To be fair, Republicans can't really fault her for leaning a little too far to the right there. I'm Cassie Leuffen. Thank you so much for watching. Careful parking. We'll see you Friday. Good night.
Welcome back to our headlines recap. I'm Cassie Leuffen. If you're joining us now, 7 Marines and 4 soldiers are presumed dead after human remains washed ashore in the area where their helicopter crashed. Officials say the troops were conducting a training exercise near Eglin Air Force Base in Florida when their Black Hawk vanished Tuesday night.
All right, a special House committee looking into the deadly Benghazi attacks in 2012 is set to interview 20 high-ranking Obama administration officials. The panel's chairman, Trey Gowdy, will interview former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta and former CIA Director David Petraeus. Gowdy says he was frustrated last week at the slow pace of the investigation, and he is aiming to speed things up. Reports say he will also interview National Security Advisor Susan Rice and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The attack in Libya, as you know, killed a U.S. ambassador and 3 other Americans. Breaking news now out of our nation's capital. The Senate has confirmed Ashton Carter to be the next defense secretary, replacing Chuck Hagel. Carter was confirmed in a vote of 93-5 just moments ago. Earlier this week, the Senate Armed Services Committee unanimously approved Carter's nomination. Carter enters the position with a lot of Pentagon experience, having served in a variety of roles, including as Deputy Defense Secretary. We will continue to follow this story and bring you more later on in the hour. And an online travel giant is packing its bags after being bought out by a competitor. Expedia is buying rival Orbitz for approximately $1.3 billion and will pay $12 a share, which is a 25% premium. The deal is Expedia's second in the past month after its $280 million acquisition of Travelocity in late January. The boards of both companies have approved the deal, but the transaction still needs to be greenlit by Orbit's shareholders. And talking about shareholders, now for a look at how the market is doing today, we turn to One America's Jennifer Franco, who is live in studio. Jen. And a second Texas nurse who tested positive for Ebola is free of the virus and discharged from the hospital. Amber Vincent, who flew to Cleveland after being infected with the disease, expressed her appreciation for the support she received. Listen.
If you're joining us now, we've been listening to a presser out of Boston where 21-year-old Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been found guilty on all 30 counts, including the death of 4 people, 3 in the blast, and a police officer at MIT University. There will now be a new trial to determine if he will face the death penalty. I do want to mention the state of Massachusetts doesn't have the death penalty, but because of the nature of this attack, it is being tried as a federal case. 3 people were killed, 260 others injured in the bombing, which is widely considered the worst domestic terror attack since 9/11.
Well, we already try to avoid breaking mirrors and walking under ladders for the most part, but today those fears are on high alert. For the second time in just 2 months, it is Friday the 13th. One America's Cameron Kramer shares some freaky facts about the superstitious day.
And GoPro users are used to going rogue, but now GoPro is going Roku. GoPro announcing it will now have its own Roku channel. The channel is set to debut this spring. It will offer viewers a combination of content produced by GoPro itself and GoPro users. By the way, that right there is my favorite shot of the day. GoPro has gained a lot of attention for the footage users have shot and submitted online. The company even has a partnership with the National Hockey League and the X Games, primarily geared toward a younger audience. Roku introduced content in 2013 on Microsoft's Xbox console and on Virgin America flights.
And Italian Raffaele Sollecito says he feels like a free person after being acquitted in the murder of British student Meredith Kircher. It has been 3 days since the court handed down this verdict.
Ford was reportedly injured after he crash landed his small plane at Penmar Golf Course. They stressed he is likely to survive. As far as the accident itself, at approximately 2:20 p.m., the pilot reported a loss of engine power and was attempting to return to the runway when they say he clipped a tree, then came to rest on the golf course. And they are going to assess the damages to the plane. You see it on the screen there. The NTSB investigator was asked if Ford was lucky, to which he answered, absolutely. Anytime you're involved in an accident and survive, you're lucky. But he stressed it's unusual for pilots to lose their lives, as aviation is generally a safe practice. On that, let's continue on with our headlines tonight. You've likely seen that image, the American flag planted firmly in the midst of the battle, a strong reminder of the 6 men who secured it there and the countless others who have fought for everything this image represents in the nearly 70 years since that photo was taken. I'm Cassie Leuffen. Thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you Monday.